So, so Guillaume talked about the addressable market, and talked about micro businesses and big brands, and how transformative this can be. So, what about the numbers? Well, we have an analyst presentation next. So we hopefully will find out a bit more about what that addressable market is and how we're doing. So to do that, I'm going to introduce Nick Lane, who's the founder of Mobilesquared.
I'm sure everyone's going to say this over the next couple of days, but it's really weird. Normally I'm slouched in front of my laptop with the webcam, staring at people, giving presentations. So to in front of me in a room again, in front of people is very refreshing. So it's lovely to see you all. Those that obviously can't make it and around the world, it's lovely to know that you're there as well. I've got a couple of things to say for the next few minutes. I hope you find them interesting. First thing, hopefully the majority of you know who Mobilesquared are, but if you don't know, we're a business messaging intelligence provider, doing lots of data in covering traffic and forecasts and lots of other things in business messaging, but we're actually changing. And we've spent a whole year developing this, so we've kind of done a soft announcement over the last couple of days, but we're kind of really announcing it here. So we're moving everything that we do into the cloud. And it's a big thing for us, as we're a small company, but we've got a big voice and we've got a hell of a lot of data now. So we are officially, as of today, as of this moment, launching Message Map IQ, which is our decision-ready data from Mobilesquared. So it's our portal. It contains millions and millions of data points already. It's only going to grow. And what we're really pleased about is that we've worked incredibly hard doing the research, getting the new data, making sure that the channels that we've been covering in terms of SMS, RCS, WhatsApp are as accurate as we can possibly make them. And we've obviously continued to add greater granularity to those. We're now in the process of looking to add other channels, so Facebook Messenger, Viber, Line, etc., even MMS. But also the big thing for us moving forward, and we've been looking at this for a while on and off, is obviously CPaaS and looking at the impact that Omnichannel is going to have. So let's get down to the numbers. In terms of where we've been looking at the opportunity, looking at just from a messaging perspective, we came up with this concept, and James Williams, who obviously sadly is not here today, but hopefully he is watching, hello James, likes the slide, so I thought I'd put it in because it's a good starting point. So this is our messaging river of spend that really shows what the opportunity is in terms of messaging. We've looked at SMS. SMS was worth about 20 billion last year. We expect it to be about $23.5 billion this year. We can see that there's a rapid growth now in terms of spend from WhatsApp. RCS isn't happening just yet. It's obviously slower to market than everyone expected. But what we're seeing is due to the scale of devices out there, the scale of smartphone users, the spend is going to come. It's a question of when. It's not whether it will come or not, it's coming. So there are various aspects, various sectors, various services, use cases that are all starting to align and come onto the messaging channel. So that's really where this opportunity comes. But we're going to go one step further today. So we're not just looking at the river of spend. We've created the tributaries. I can't even say it. Tributaries. That's it, of CPaaS. And again, it's looking at the impact that SMS is going to have. Rich messaging, video, email, voice, in-app notifications, everything that we obviously associate with that omni-channel environment. So in terms of where we are, as again, I've got to stress, we're only just starting our journey in terms of research, looking at Omnichannel or CPaaS. And all we've done here is look at the revenues from 22 CPaaS providers. That's it. And from 2020, that market then was worth $11.5 billion. And to put that into perspective, and to give you an idea of where the growth was, all we've done again is look at the growth from 2019 to 2020. We've just applied that to our forecast period. We will be probably contacting the majority of you and you watching everywhere in the world as we do our research to make sure that we have a truly kind of great depth of insight and analysis from companies obviously running and operating CPaaS channels to make sure that when we do have our official forecast and our report out, it is as in-depth and as accurate as can be. But the point is, even just looking at this from these 22 companies, they will be generating, we believe, about 35 billion in 2024. So the market is enormous, given where we are in terms of SMS. But again, as I've been saying for the last year, we've got to stop limiting our views in terms of the revenue generation from SMS. SMS has its limitations. The rich world is very different. So if we look at the impact, for example, and the channel breakdown, again, this is just from our initial research that we've been doing, talking to a few companies. Right now, in 2021, messaging is still going to account for 68% of total CPaaS spend. 62% of that, of the total spend, is coming from SMS. So again, if you then look at the value of the SMS market at about $23.5 billion, what this shows is that SMS as part of it within the CPaaS context accounts for about a third of total A2P SMS spend right now. Other channels we see that will grow over this time, obviously at the expense of SMS over the next couple of years. Hopefully you can see this, will obviously be WhatsApp and video, we believe, will probably be the two channels that are going to grow the most over that time. We do have voice in here, but we kind of think that will decline. But again, until we've done our complete research, this is just our kind of our interim view on things. And again, to kind of show the impact that messaging's having in the omnichannel world, if you look at businesses that are now moving into the CPaaS space, typically what we're seeing and what we're being told is that if you go in using one channel, it's most likely to be SMS. So right now, 40% of companies, as they start their way into this omnichannel world, are starting with SMS. And some companies obviously look at social media and video, but otherwise services such as voice-rich messaging and email are lagging behind somewhat, so there's obviously less appeal there. Companies that start with more of an omnichannel approach will be looking from a kind of a triple channel entry point, shall we say, will become 3 channels out of 5. SMS again is a given, and then the other 2 will be anything from social media, voice, rich messaging, or email. But here's the thing, out of all these companies that are looking more from an omnichannel approach, again, this is less than 10% of companies using omnichannel. If we then look at companies using 6 channels, and it's the true omnichannel view of the world, then yeah, you've got SMS, social media, voice, rich messaging, email, and video. But the issue here is that this is less than 10% of all companies using omnichannel. So the opportunity, as we see it, given that the market's 11.5 billion, we expect it to rise to 35 billion, and hardly any companies are actually using omnichannel right now, given the number of businesses, this market is only going to grow exponentially. And again, as part of our move into the cloud, we've just completed a massive piece of consumer research, so we're just going to share a few top-line figures with you. Obviously, this is going to be put in as part of our engagement data into our portal. But this really just shows how do consumers communicate between themselves right now. And hopefully you can see this, for 73% of the consumers we asked, and this is for Western Europe, said email. 66% use SMS, 53% WhatsApp, 51% use voice. Again, some of these figures I think are a bit low, but this is what the consumers have told us, this is what we've paid for. So email then is the people's champion still, ahead of SMS, but then you look at things like WhatsApp. WhatsApp is more popular than voice and Facebook. So again, 2 of the top 3 are messaging. So messaging, again, is playing a key role in terms of the world of omnichannel. Then we asked, how do brands contact you? And this is where I think things get really interesting. 61% of people that responded said that brands contact them via email, voice and SMS, but this figure's clearly skewed significantly because of email, where 75% of your consumers said it's email, voice is about a quarter, around 25%, and SMS is 32%. If we then break it down in terms of how do brands communicate with you via messaging channels, just 19% on average are contacted via messaging from brands. Now that I find remarkable, but it's maybe a sign of where things are and maybe where things are going. Because this is where I think things get really interesting. So if you look at our business messaging tracker, and I don't know, you won't be able to see that figure because I can hardly see it here. But as of the end of December, there will be 5.3 unique SMS users in the world. Billion. 5.3 billion. There will be about 3.5 billion unique rich messaging users in the world. And again, we can scroll down here. There'll be close to 2.4 billion WhatsApp users, so on and so forth. Facebook Messenger, 1.5 billion. So the scale in terms of users, in terms of people using messaging, is astronomical. And what we've seen from advertising is that brands will follow where users are. So brands will start to follow the time spent. And we've seen, I'm sure we've all seen research from various companies that say that X% of a user's time is now spent within a messaging app. If you look at something like WeChat, it's pretty much 100% in China is spent within WeChat, but obviously it's almost its own domain in terms of what WeChat actually offers now. But whether messaging channels outside of China can replicate that remains to be seen. But again, this just really kind of trying to hammer home the point that messaging is going to be key. So you can see here of the 100% of total unique SMS users, 66% of those are rich messaging users, 44% are WhatsApp. So these are very powerful, very compelling figures. And again, just to put that into context, there is now almost as many rich messaging users as there are social media users on mobile. And given the hullabaloo that there has been around social media for the last 10 years from brands and agencies trying to connect to their customers and potential customers on social, this spend will migrate and start to migrate, or some of it, onto messaging and part of an omnichannel strategy. And again, just want to put that into some perspective for you. So ARPU for SMS, A2P SMS in 2020 was $3.48. That's annualized ARPU. On WhatsApp, that was 5 cents. On RCS, that was 1 cent. So at the bottom here, this is mobile advertising. So this is based on mobile advertising spend globally in 2020 from figures from, I think, Zenith Optimedia of $200 billion. So all we've done here is divided by a number of smartphone users. So that gives you an annualized ARPU of $46. So this is what's been achieved by other industries on smartphones. So there's absolutely no reason why this cannot be achieved in the omnichannel world, and obviously on a basis in terms of messaging. And here's the other thing that we've been looking at. We've looked at a number of businesses that are using SMS. We've actually revised our figures based on some new research. So in total, we believe 5% of total registered businesses, that is, just 5% are using A2P SMS. So you can see the numbers. Are they going to pop up? They're not. So that means 95%, I'm sure you can do the maths, are not using messaging. But again, we're not going to assume that every of those companies, every of those businesses will use messaging. We know that they won't. So what we've looked at are the businesses that actually spend money or paid for marketing around the world. So as you can see, typically between large and medium businesses, about 100%, we believe from the data and some of the numbers that we've seen, 100% of those businesses will be spending money on paid for marketing in one way or another. That figure drops to about 70% when you get to small enterprises and about 50% of micro. So if we then remove the number of companies using messaging against the number of total companies that are using paid for marketing to give an indication of the number of businesses that might actually be using Omnichannel, for example, and it shows that we've got to reach out to another 145 million businesses. So that is a massive, massive opportunity. Obviously, you can see that a lot of those businesses are micro. They're 125 million. You've got 15.5 million in terms of small, but you still have 4.5 million medium enterprises and just, I think, 1.4 million large. So the opportunity is just unfathomable, to be honest. It is vast. So based on where we see CPAS right now, based on our interim research findings of 35 billion against the number of smartphone users we expect for 2024, we have Omnichannel, or CPAS, generating an annualized ARPU of $7.7 per person in 2024. If we apply the ARPU that mobile advertising is generating to the number of smartphone users, we can see that the potential spend trajectory then goes up to 207 billion. And what we're not even doing is factoring in the 145 million companies that are really yet to embrace this opportunity. So in terms of where we are as a market, I would say we're just at the very, very beginning. And it's very exciting. And who knows what's going to happen, but it's only going to grow, grow, grow. And I think it's going to be a fantastic journey. Speaking of fantastic journeys, those of you that have managed to make it in here, we'd love to welcome you to the networking drinks from 6 o'clock in the Paget room tonight, which we will be hosting. And on top of that, if you'd like a demonstration of our wonderful Message Map IQ portal, we have a stand in the Snow room, I think it is, not the Paget room, the other one. And we can give you a demo and show you the data, how granular we can take to the data, and just show you how wonderful it is. We've got Andy here, who will show you an amazing demonstration. And if that's not enough, we also have brownies. So if you'd like a brownie, please come and join us at the stand. But that's me done, so I hope you find that interesting. And look forward to seeing you throughout the next couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. 207, just a 207 billion market opportunity then. That's that's pretty inspirational, isn't it? Just before, I just want to find out if there's anyone's got a question. There must be questions. Yeah, we've got a hand up down the bottom. Well, we're waiting for Eva to get to the questioner. Just a reminder that MEF members get access to all the presentations over the next couple of days, including this excellent one from Nick. So log into the website and you'll be able to access all the presentations. So question from the front, thank you.
Thanks, Nick. That was really interesting. My name's Gareth. I'm an independent consultant, but I'm doing a little bit of work with friends at Mavenir. So I was really interested that you talked a lot about the different channels and the potential audience that you can reach. So just sort of building on Guillaume's point from before around, educating brands about what can be done. Be interested to understand if you've got anything from your research which indicates the effectiveness of those individual channels in order to deliver the end result that a brand may wish to achieve, either from an email, an SMS, a WhatsApp, or whichever one, and what the ecosystem can learn from that, because that really will drive the uptake here.
Well, we got the data delivered to us on Friday, so we do have it, but I haven't had a chance to look at it because there's just too much of it. So we will be processing that, so we do have it. One of the things to show is looking at kind of the impact of rich messaging versus SMS. And I know I'm just talking about messaging, and there are obviously, in the omnichannel world, there are other channels. But if you look at the impact, so one thing we've done is a number of studies using use case data that was provided to us by probably a lot of you in the room here today. And we've done a comparison looking at looking at return of investment on a campaign on messaging, so SMS versus rich messaging. So it's very similar typically what we're seeing between RCS and WhatsApp, for example. And what we've seen is that to get a return of investment, let's say, of $50,000, which you might get from 2 campaigns, to achieve that, you'd need to send 1 million SMS. To achieve that in rich messaging, you need to send around 250,000. So it shows that the level of engagement, interaction, and the likelihood or propensity to make that purchase and complete that journey is already significantly higher in that kind of richer domain. In terms of how does that compare to email, I know email's a lot smaller. I think it's around 1% to 2%, I believe, but then, I guess the open read rate on email is about 22%, and then who goes on from the journey, it obviously drops, it falls off significantly after that point. But other channels, I don't know. We'd need to look, to be honest, but hopefully that gives you initial insight into what we're seeing.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you for the question. Reminder to the virtual audience, you can ask questions at any time as well.
Hey.
And we have one more question
Hey,
quickly
Nick.
for Nick.
What's in that rich messaging number? Like, what are you considering rich messaging versus WhatsApp, Apple Business Chat, Google Business Messaging, et cetera? So, like, what are you putting into that number? And does your numbers take to affect the difference between, let's say, conversational and engagement versus just one way or one way with a reply, or et cetera? So how are you differentiating that makeup and the breakdown of the revenue?
So when you say numbers, are you saying the numbers on the presentation?
Yeah, in the
or what I've just
presentation.
said?
So you had SMS and you had rich messaging and then you had WhatsApp and so what are you considering rich messaging? Like, what's in that bucket?
Well, at the moment, in that bucket is everything that we're looking at. So it's got Facebook Messenger data in, it's obviously WhatsApp, it's RCS, it's SMS. We are adding the likes of Line, WeChat, Kakao.
So your message. So when I'm looking at the bar chart, I'm looking at SMS as plain old SMS that we all know and love.
Yep.
And then rich messaging is everything from behind it, all bundled up into one.
Well, you can, okay, that's the simplest way of looking at it. So rich messaging right now accounts for, I think, for about 4 or 5% of total spend on Omnichannel, CPaaS. By 2024, we expect that to be up to around 20%, but the majority of that will be coming from WhatsApp.
Okay.
What we need to add into that is obviously the impact of Line, although from what we've heard, Line isn't particularly, it's not really firing on all cylinders. WeChat we haven't included, but that's obviously slightly different, but we'll try and include that as well. And any other channel will depend on the market. Obviously Viber's a big one for obviously the Baltic CIS region, so we'll be looking to include that as well. So again, you know, I think the key point I keep stressing is that this is just an initial view of where we see CPaaS.
No, I agree. I'm just trying to get an understanding of it.
But in terms of the engagement,
yeah,
that's what we're starting to look at now. So we're starting to get an idea of what the impact that engagement's having. So
the
conversational,
impact
is taking up that interaction level significantly higher.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Quick question from me, Nick. What do you see happening to SMS? You've alluded in your presentation to the fact that SMS is still incredibly strong, even in 2021. Do you think that it will continue to stay that way and everything else will just become more adopted, or will there be some, you know, reduction as RCS and other channels? So we
changed our view. We kind of reset our view on SMS. We thought it was going to continue to grow gradually until about 2023, and then it would kind of plateau and then start to decline as rich messaging really took off. But the adoption of rich messaging has been slow. Incredibly slow. Obviously WhatsApp have now made one significant change, we think, that came into act in September, in the sense that you can now start to do promos and marketing to your opted-in database, and that's a big change. So that is going to have an impact on A2P SMS. At the moment, you know, we've seen a small amount of migration from SMS onto WhatsApp Business app, but that's obviously only the smaller micro companies doing that, and they've been attracted by the fact that it's a free service. Yeah. But in terms of spend, we expect it to grow. It's experiencing strong growth again, so we kind of think it will grow and be worth about 31 billion by 2025. But then we think it will start to it'll plateau and then start to decline. But that's when rich messaging really takes off. There are a number of use cases that we think will remain on A2P SMS anyway, so it's always going to be kind of the foundation for rich messaging, but over time rich messaging will just kind of massively overtake the spend levels.
So amazingly enduring platform after whatever many years it is, 40 years.
But I mean, that's the thing, there's hardly any businesses using it.
Yeah.
If you look at the number of businesses, you know, we've mentioned registered, you look at certain regions where there's millions and millions of unregistered businesses. Yeah. So again, the opportunity is absolutely enormous.
Brilliant. All right, well, let's thank Nick once again. Thank you very much, Nick.
Question.